diminutive effect on us mentally is really not to be in tune with ourselves. And so that's what this morning is really all about, is really trying to understand historically how that has affected us, and much more importantly, to really dive into understanding some coping skills that we can utilize to try and get through this together. We have approximately 95 people that are registered. And so I'm going to ask that everyone keep themselves muted. The chat room is going to be very active. Like I said, this is going to be a very interactive session. And so we will be looking in there for questions, and we will be unmuting people at a certain point so that they can ask questions. And so I would just ask you to be cognizant of any background noises and to keep yourself muted if you can. We have a couple of people that I will introduce. First is going to be the shepherd of this house, Pastor James Miller. And then after that, you will hear from Kalita Himes. Kalita is a licensed social worker who's graduated from Fordham University, but more importantly, she graduated from a HBCU, Grambling, and she has a master's in social work. She has a variety of things that she has done throughout her career. Her specialties include cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. She currently works for Oak Park River Forest High School and is a school social worker there and a racial leader. But the next voice you'll hear is our Pastor Miller, who will offer greetings and a word of prayer, followed by Kalita Himes.
Thank you, Derek, and I want to thank you. I want to thank the committee. I want to thank the members who had the vision of requesting this, and certainly the way that you contextualized it, it's a need that we probably as a nation, but certainly as a people are not really aware of. So I hope that and pray that you'll have the revelations. I'm happy we've got the expertise of our own membership that we're utilizing, and I'm thankful to see the faces and the names of everyone that's here. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to ask that when you see me, I'll be going to, I've got to slip off and go to the homegoing celebration of our member Doris Lundy. And we're going to celebrate Doris. So, you know, I guess sometimes this pastor is macabre and morbid, but you all going to miss a good sermon today. So I'm ready to go to work, and but have a good forum. And without further ado, let's look to the Lord in prayer. Beautiful summer day. And thank you for the spirit of fellowship that thrives in our congregation, our church home, our family of faith. Now, Lord, as we give you glory for this time and pray for everything, it's in your hands. You know all about it. And we thank you for the work that will be done today. Give us revelations. And bless all that is shared in this time, that we may just feel your presence and be together in faith, hope, and love. So thank you again, and especially for our guest presenters who are our guests today. We give you glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Good morning, all. Thank you so much for being here with me and everyone on this call today. I'm Kalita Himes, and I'm certainly just grateful to be amongst the land of the living with everything that is happening in our communities today. You know, this is a very important issue that we are facing. It is impacting the Black community. Racism has greatly impacted our mental health. It has certainly had a huge impact on my family, myself. We know that racism has always existed, but today there is a sense of boldness. Every day we're seeing people blatantly engaging in these racially charged incidents without any fear. We've seen the impact that it's had on our communities. As Derek mentioned earlier, I am in the mental health profession and I'm a school social worker, and I've definitely seen the impact of racism on our students and on our families. We do have some amazing speakers today, so I don't want to go too deep into what I'm seeing, but just to highlight some of the things that we are seeing as we see the impacts on racism include a lot of panic. There's certainly a lot of fear that is happening right now, a decreased hope in our futures, our justice system, the government. I am most definitely seeing an increase of depression and anxiety, not just in students, but even myself. I'm feeling a lot of angst. I'm feeling a lot of things that are keeping me up at night. And there's just lots of feelings of powerlessness right now. And definitely second guessing things. And, you know, I'm seeing a lot of families, especially students of color, who are feeling disconnected, who are feeling alone. And there is, you know, we just got to be honest, there's this rage that people are also feeling right now. So I'm just grateful that we have some dynamic speakers who are with us today to talk about how do we manage and how do we deal with this post-traumatic race syndrome that is impacting our communities. Before we get started, I'd first like to introduce Cherie White. Cherie is a clinical therapist, and she has a private practice where she's working with individuals, couples, and their families to address a wide range of issues. Some of Cherie's presenting issues she's successfully treated have been ADHD, anxiety, child abuse and neglect, critical stress debriefings, depression, family conflict, school and work-related problems, grief, military deployment and reintegration concerns, and PTSD. Cherie's overall goal is aimed at helping others to restore a sense of harmony and balance to their lives. And before I introduce her, I've got to say she is a devastating diva of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So thank you so much for being here with us, Soror. And my first question to you is, you know, 2020 has been quite a challenging year for the Black community. And I'm hoping you can just share with us some things that you're seeing in your practice, and what are some of the most pressing issues that you're seeing with clients that you serve?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that wonderful introduction also. So yes, in the private practice, been definitely seeing a lot more than what I've seen in recent years. I mean, depression has been here and anxiety has been here. However, there's been a tremendous amount of increase as it relates to, you know, people, you know, all the tension around the world. I mean, it's, you know, I kind of started really seeing an increase when the pandemic started, but even more so all the racial tension that's going on. I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore. And I think, you know, in our community, you know, unfortunately, mental health or seeking mental health treatment has always, that stigma has always been there, that taboo has always been there, you know, but I am fortunate to see that more people are reaching out for help. Like you mentioned, a lot of helplessness is going on, you know, people not knowing what to do. People who haven't really accessed counseling before are now reaching out. And one of the things that I can appreciate with the Ohio Social Worker and Counselor Board is that they have opened up the opportunity for us to do more telehealth. So we're able to kind of reach more people that we haven't reached before. It's removed a lot of the barriers to people, you know, seeking help. You know, we have to really be cognizant of how we are in any given moment. A lot of us, especially people who are in the helping profession, you know, we're used to helping everybody else, but then we kind of forget, you know, we go through our stuff too. You know, I tell my clients all the time, just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean I'm free from experiencing everything that everybody else is experiencing as well. And of course, as an African-American woman, my passion is really working with, I can work with anybody, I really can. However, my passion really is working with us and making sure that we are good. So I'm very, I'm always pushing, you know, people to really tap into themselves. I think Derek kind of said it earlier, to just kind of being in tune, you know, with yourself, increasing that self-awareness, because sometimes we're used to going and we're used to doing, we're used to bearing the weight of the world on our shoulder, that we're not really aware of what's going on with us. So as a strategy or suggestion, I'm always saying, listen to what your body is telling you. You know, how often are you experiencing, you know, whether it's headaches, whether it's insomnia, and you're really not connecting it to your overall mental health? Because nobody wants to, you know, be quote unquote crazy. I don't want that label, but stress is mental health, and people don't really understand that. You don't have to have a diagnosis. I don't treat the diagnosis. I treat the symptoms. Mm-hmm. The diagnosis just happens to be a name. So one of the things that, at least my approach to when I'm working with our population, is removing that stigma associated with mental health. You want to feel good. It's no different than if you broke your foot. God forbid, hopefully you're going to go and, you know, get some help for that. If you are stressed and not knowing where to turn because you feel like you don't really have those supports, definitely reach out. You know, everybody probably on this call knows somebody that's in the helping profession, in the mental health. It usually starts with a phone call. Therapy, you know, I often get people saying, you know, it's really hard to open up to a stranger. Well, that might be the case, and that's why people don't go to counseling or therapy. But in actuality, the hardest part is not really coming in. It's really what you do when you leave. I often give homework assignments and things that people can do, you know, until the next time. If you choose not to do the work, then guess what? You're really doing yourself a disservice the next time you come in, if you haven't really applied some of those concepts that we talked about. So I believe that these discussions are so important, you know, to have on a consistent basis, in order to kind of reach the masses. We have to take care of ourselves, you know, as a whole community. If we're not well, guess what? We're not well. Period, point blank. You don't operate you might think that you're operating well, but you're really not. The mask at some point is going to come off. I often give the analogy, or not analogy, but an example is, if you have two balloons, one big, one small, you blow them both up, which one is going to burst first? So I'm going to give y'all a secret so y'all can use this on somebody else. So often, you know, somebody might say the small balloon, somebody might say the big balloon, and I'll ask them why, and they'll give a rationale. And really, it's a trick question. It really depends on the elasticity of the balloon that determines which one is going to burst first. Sometimes you might have the small balloon burst first. Sometimes you might have the big one. And so as humans, as individuals, we're kind of the same way. You know, our emotional bank can only get so full if you're not releasing it. And so usually it manifests itself in the way that you might interact with other people. You might lash out in anger, or you might withdraw and isolate. And that's something else that I've been seeing as it relates to a lot of the things that's been going on in 2020. I myself am ready for 2020 to be over, with. Come on, 2021. But, you know, that's one of the things: isolation, the depression, the anxiety, those things are definitely been increasing. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, hopefully as a takeaway is, you know, reaching out to people that you may not normally reach out to because you think that they're good. And just check in, just do a quick check-in. And last thing before I stop, because I can go on and on about mental health in our community, because again, I want us to be well. But I encourage everybody that's on this call today to do a mental health check-in with yourself 3 times a day. When you get up in the morning, assess how you're feeling. When you start watching the news or getting on social media, all of that stuff you're impacted by, directly or indirectly. You don't understand how it does your body, or how your body is kind of responding to that, or your unconscious mind. It's capturing all of that. So then you're going to do it in the afternoon. We've all had interactions with our coworkers by that time, so they're dumping stuff on us. And then before you go to bed, also, again, tap into how you're feeling so that you can try to get whatever you have on off of you. Even if you can't resolve it in that moment, acknowledgement is key. And so with that, I will be done, because I know we have to keep going. But again, I thank you all for the opportunity, you know, to even engage in this very important and needed topic.
Thank you so much, Cherie. And, you know, I greatly appreciate you talking about the stigma of mental health in the Black community because, you know, it is important that we recognize those signs when we need to seek professional help. And I'm just going to be real. We all got that auntie, that crazy cousin or uncle, and, you know, we just play it off. Oh, nothing's wrong with him. He just a little crazy. But we're seeing an increase in that crazy right now. And it is really important for the Black community to recognize that mental health is important. It does not mean that you are crazy. It does not mean that you have a diagnosis. It is imperative that you look at your own self so that you can get the help that you need. So I greatly appreciate you sharing that. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Leonard Ingram. He is a psychotherapist and has been providing individual and family counseling for over 25 years. And his emphasis has been with anger management and violence intervention. Over the years, Dr. Ingram has been recognized as many as the guru and expert on anger management theory and practice, and he has been featured in the PBS documentary, The Children Are Watching, the CBS Sunday Morning Program, The Montel Williams Show, and over 20 local TV and radio programs in Chicago. Dr. Ingram is also a consultant for the Chicago Board of Education. He has conducted hundreds of training workshops for teachers, parents, students, and school staff. He has also conducted numerous training workshops for police departments throughout Chicagoland. Dr. Ingram is amazing. He's got a unique training course to enhance counseling skills. He is the founder and director of the Anger Management Institute of Chicago and the executive director of the Heart organization serving court-ordered at-risk youth offenders in DuPage and Will counties. Dr. Ingram, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. We know that with COVID and the recent events it's so sad that you could just keep naming these folks, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and not to mention the countless Karen videos that we've seen. This only serves to tip the scales and the outrage of what Black people have been witnessing. So I'm hoping that you can share with us and just help us kind of put into context what we're seeing.
Well, I don't know, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, well, I think you pretty much summed it up very excellently. There's always been trauma in the world, so that's not a new thing. But what is sort of new is this, all of it coming at the same time, you see? It's a lot to be said about that. With the threat of this COVID-19 and unemployment, of course, is a big factor in African-American stress, and so forth and so on. But to the point as to when you should seek out help. And one thing is the type of help, because most Western schools of psychotherapy and psychology are not culturally centered, first and foremost. And there's very few practitioners who are not able to access the cultural dimension of therapy that are effective. That's why a lot of our people, they'll go to a session one time and then you're not going to see them anymore because there is no kind of rapport or resonance felt there. So while it is still better than nothing, but the best kind of therapy is the therapy that is culturally centered. I love the title of this seminar today, Makes You Want to Holler. And anything that makes you want to holler is a sign that you probably need to go see somebody to help you from acting out that underlying frustration. And in our case, it's an awful lot of it, you see. I mean, besides the things that are currently here, there's always been poverty that is contributing to the traumatic experience that African people and other people of colors have historically experienced in this country. The political and social disempowerment. I mean, you all know as well as I do, because most of us that I see here are people of color, so I'm preaching to the choir. But we all are familiar with those stressors. Poor education, the high rate of incarceration, poor health care, institutionalized and systemic racism. So it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. There is no avoiding of it, you see, and so forth and so on. Intellectual racism. We see that in the educational system. None of our history is really taught. You'll get the impression that people of color has never contributed anything to the growth of civilization, et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, spiritual racism. Or religious racism. What I thought was very interesting, you all are the African Methodist Episcopal Church, right? And I think, and I'm not sure, you have to correct me here and guide me. I think you had an extraordinary person by the name of Richard Allen that founded this organization, pretty much during that historical period where racism was, again, very clearly manifest in religious situations, right? And he broke away, right? And it's because of the racism, it blocked the actual development, spiritual development of Black people. So I think it's been a long tradition of that. I want to compliment Miss Cherie White, our sister there, because I think her summary was definitely absolutely on point. So much of the symptoms of traumatic racism, and that's an area that I try to focus in on with my clients, is really a kind of a post-traumatic racism syndrome. It's not something new. Everybody here knows that racism is not new. So we have a kind of collected traumatic experience that has spanned hundreds of years. But it definitely results in, just as Sister White was saying, in a kind of cultural anger. And when we don't know how to manage our anger appropriately, we're going to mismanage it inappropriately every single time. And since historically you could not express that anger at your slave master and so forth and so on, you would displace it. We call it a displacement of anger, which produced a lot of violence in our own community. But nevertheless, when you are suffering from all of those things we just talked about, you're a victim of all of that, you're going to get angry. It's just human. So it becomes important that the therapy should include some component of anger management and so forth and so on. Cultural depression, same thing, you see. Again, remember, when we all have been subjected to these kinds of stressors and traumatic experiences for hundreds of years, and that it is systemic, you're bound to get depressed. Are you with me about it all at some point, you see? And so there has to be some kind of component in the therapy that gives us the ability to manage and cope with our depression in such a way that we don't wind up blowing our brains out or falling into drug addiction, alcoholism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those are signs and symptoms of the inability to deal with those impulses that leads to depression. Definitely, we're going to develop some antisocial behavior, because you cannot go through that kind of experience and come out 100% sane. So we got more than one or two uncles that are crazy, right? We got crazy neighbors, crazy kids, crazy husband, crazy wives, etc., because we were damaged in that process, right? There's no doubt about it. There's no shame in that, you see? So we have to come out of denial about the reality that historical racism, particularly at the systemic level, have caused a lot of us to have a lot of antisocial behavior that negatively impact our own family dynamics, et cetera, et cetera. On an interesting note, one of the statistics, I think coming from around about 1930, 23% of the fathers were absent from home. 23%, that's still a big number, but today it's about 74%. It begins to show how this racism even affects how we interact with one another as husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, and so forth and so on. So folk, we got a problem, okay? No doubt about it. And cultural paranoia, anxiety, as Sister White was saying, epidemic, you see? And we resort to all kinds of ways to relieve ourselves of those fears and feelings of anxiety. So drug use definitely going to be epidemic. Are you with me? It's self-medicating to get rid of that experience of anxiety. It's a way of distracting yourself from the reality of your situation and so forth and so on. And I mean, it was so much concluded in Sister White sharing with us that we could spend a couple of semesters here just exploring this thing. But unfortunately, we don't have that kind of time. But certainly, one of the ones that is most obvious is a kind of cultural alienation, right? And isolation, right? The avoidance of quote unquote white folk and so forth and so on, and even an isolation in our own community from one another. Are you with me? A kind of way of protecting ourselves from future trauma. So my goal in the work that I do is really very simple. I try to provide brothers and sisters with those sets of emotional skills, spiritual skills, cognitive skills, by which they can constructively and effectively deal with the historical and present time impact of racism in a way that is psychologically healthy and nonviolent. And then, of course, to positively shape and control their own reality. So again, it's a big subject, and I apologize for abbreviating it, but so much more can be said, and I think that you all are certainly taking a big step in that right direction and providing your own members and hopefully other pastors of churches will mimic that, because the church has always been a source of our healing, and that has to continue. It has to be updated and feed us as it did once before. So with that, I turn it back over to you, and I'm just going to be here like the rest of us having church.
Thank you so much. You definitely dropped some knowledge on us today. I really like the way you put into terms what this means for us. When we hear cultural depression, when we hear cultural alienation and isolation and cultural paranoia, it puts a name on it for us, and we are better able to understand why we're feeling the way we're feeling. I recently read a great book, and there was a Black psychologist who was sharing with us that, you know, just as we put on sunscreen to protect our screen, we have to have psychological fortitude and able to protect our mental health. And I'm most concerned with our youth. You know, our youth right now, they're leading these protests, they're leading these rallies, and we need to listen to our youth, but they're angry. And I'm wondering, since you are so skilled in the area of anger management, what are some things that our youth can do to not just understand this generational trauma, but how can they take that anger and use it in a constructive way?
Yes. Well, you know, it's very interesting that you asked that question, because as mentioned, we have the Heart Organization out here in Bolingbrook, and that's where we're based. Some of you might have known Joanne Robinson. Did anybody know Joanne? Well, you had good kids. Oh, you did. Okay, we got one. Okay. Hi, Yolanda. So started in about 1999. And to date, we've served about at least 5,000 of these kids. Many of them mismanage their anger in a way that they wind up before the court, so forth and so on. And then, of course, they have an opportunity to come through our program, have that arrest dismissed and the record clear so it doesn't hamper them. But the question more pointedly is that you see in adolescent stage of development, some rebellion and anger is inherent. You see, a lot of our at-risk youth particularly Black at-risk youth, come from at-risk families. So you have to deal with the whole fabric there. But it is typical for adolescents to rebel, and they're angry because they're trying to individuate. They're trying to be themselves. The problem is they don't know who they are and so forth. So it's a lot of different things you have to do with a young person to help them. The thing that we can do that will help them the most is that we have to manage our anger appropriately, because children mimic the emotional styles of their parents. And this is done in stage 1 of development, from birth to about 7. They're going to imitate you. They're not going to listen to your lectures and so forth and so on. They're going to imitate you. They'll imitate the way you walk, talk, the food you eat, et cetera, et cetera. But more importantly, they're going to imitate you psychologically and emotionally. Are you with me? So what you do with your anger, you're going to find out that's going to be exactly what they do with their anger. And it's very unconscious. It's not a conscious process. Are you with me? There's an osmosis that goes on here. You become like the company you keep. And the company they keep is ours more than any other company. At that time, when they're really beginning to form their personalities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it behooves us, therefore, as parents of these teenagers and younger kids, we got to start practicing what we're preaching to them. They don't have any prefrontal cortex. That's the next thing you have to understand. You see, the prefrontal cortex that gives them the capacity to manage the impulses coming from the amygdala, it's a neurology involved here. That's not even developed. You see, they're all gas, no brakes. They don't have the brain development to do that, to regulate their impulsive behavior, right? So we have to function at another stage of their surrogate brain. Again, it starts with us. Bucks stops with us, right? And so we have to do our due diligence and do our work, and we have to do it at a time when they're going to listen to you. If you wait till that kid is 17 years old, that kid is not going to listen to you. See? They'll listen to their peers, you see, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where we lose them. Most of our boys, if we don't turn them around by the age of 17, we're going to lose them. And that's just reality. In the city there, up in Lundale and Wild 100s, you see, Woodlawn, you see, et cetera, et cetera. Half of those boys, at least 40% of them, are already felonized by the time they're 17. That's the most critical point. So at the Heart Organization, we develop a whole curriculum. I can't really go into all of that right now, but it's very sophisticated. And we have only a 4% recidivism rate. Just 4%. We can't get them all. Wish to God we could. We can't. You see? But we're getting the, about 96% of them. They turn around. So it's very difficult for parents to develop that kind of relationship because there's so much emotional baggage in those relationships. They're still mad at you because you didn't get them everything they had asked for on their Santa Claus list. Are you with me? So they still got issues with you. Now, before I leave that, I must tell you parenthetically that when you really, really sit down and work with these young people, their biggest issues that is the source of so much of their rebellion, and they have a lot of anger at the parents too, is that it's the same as ours. When I work with the parents, they tell me the same thing, both sides of that relationship. The parents sit you and complain, these kids don't listen to me. Right. The kids complain is, my parents don't listen to me. So when you have two people that are not listening to each other, we got a problem, don't you think? And so that's what we try to do at the Heart Organization. We try to bring these two sides together and get some real communication going here. Well, that's the end of that commercial. But again, I'm here to respond to whatever it is that you find of interest. And again, I want to thank the church. I definitely want to thank, I tend to call them Pastor Stovall. I don't know why I do that. It's just something instinctive in me, but certainly want to thank Dr. Yolanda and Derek for the invitation. I consider it a privilege to play whatever small role I can in the healing of our people. You asked finally, what can we do to deal with this traumatic experience? Well, ancestors figured that out a long time ago, you see. They understood a process that was ancient. They call it Sankofa. And if you know a little bit about original African spirituality, particularly as it expressed in the Akan tradition, you know they have these 64 symbols, et cetera, one of which is Sankofa. Looks like a heart or a bird turned backward. The basis of that practice was developing the psychological ability to transcend their real-time experiences. Because we're sitting here, we're going through this racism, but let's not get it twisted. What we're going through don't even come close to what our ancestor went through in the antebellum South, in what we call the Ma'aha. Not even close, right? And they didn't fall apart because of some Sankofa. You see, it's a indigenous spiritual practice, you see, where you are able to transcend how other people are treating you, and never conclude on the basis of that there's something flawed in you. They always knew, I'm a human being. You see, technically, they were never slaves in a psychological sense. Are you with me? You see, it was circumstantial, but inside there was no experience of being a slave. You see, they understood who and whose they are, and they held on to that. If that didn't happen, none of us would be here having this conversation. And when we talk about building emotional resiliency, they were way ahead of us, right? Now people have to come to people like me and Sister White, spend their money or use their insurance for us to help them build some emotional resiliency. You see, the ability to endure that which is difficult to endure, right? The ability to do that which is hard to do. You see, they got all of those skill set from Sankofa. And we all still have that same possibility, but we got to go deep down inside of ourselves, right? So you don't take it personally. Are you with me? It says something about them. It doesn't say nothing about us, you see? We are still first-class human beings. It's in our very nature to do what in KwaZulu culture they call Ubuntu, to respect the humanity of other human beings. That's African. And it was deep down inside of us then, it's still deep down inside of us, right? And not base our worth and value on the basis of how these people don't treat us. Are you with me? It has nothing to do with our worth and value. And then that way we recover the ability to love ourselves. But if you internalize and formulate your image of yourself based on how you've been treated over the course of historical racism, you won't have no self-respect. You will have what we call self-contempt, and you won't care what happened to you because fundamentally you feel that your life does not matter. You see, Black Lives Matter is something that Black people have to understand. You see, because white supremacy is grounded in the absolute belief that Black lives don't matter. You see, so you're telling people who are unconscious or conscious racists that Black lives don't matter, but this is going completely against their cultural and social experience over these last 500 years as well. No. We have to tell one another and remind one another, your life matter, Black lives matter, you know? So you have to enter into a whole different kind of process, and we can talk about that later, perhaps. But that process has to deal with our worth and value physically, emotionally, cognitively, in the social domain, and certainly spiritually, right? I mean, it's really interesting. We're the creator of all of the spirituality on this planet, period. Hmm? And long before there was a Western religion, long before there was Christianity, Islam, you see, Judaism, you see, there was Shetowanata, African spirituality. And the only reason these Western religions resonated was because they were grounded in the African spiritual tradition. Don't get me started, folks, okay? This is going
Dr.
on,
Ingram.
they redirect me somewhere.
Yeah, Dr. Ingram, I want to make sure that we address some of the questions in the chat room.
Yes.
And for you as well as Cherie, one of the questions that I see is, well, before that, when we had a question about how can you define an at-risk family? Because I think either you or Cherie talked about families that were at risk. What does that look like?
I'll defer to my sister first because she always nails it, and then I'll add my little 2 cents. So may I send this over to Sister White?
Yes, you can indeed. When I think of at-risk families, I definitely think of individuals in low-income areas that don't have access to a lot of different services or just even a lot of support. That in and of itself puts them at risk for a lot of exposures to a lot of adversities, you know, whether it be crime amongst each other, crime on, others, the mental health, especially not tapping into that. So anybody that's not able to, for whatever reason, access supportive services, I consider to be at risk. People who are not either have the ability to care for or advocate for themselves, or are in situations that they're put in that, place them in dangers. And when I think of that, I think of people who come from, well, no, I'm not even going to that. That's a different area, but
okay.
Yeah. I was about to go somewhere else, and I don't want to go there for this particular topic, but at risk could encompass so many different things, especially in our, community. I mean, you could be living in the suburbs and be at risk if you don't have that basic family foundation together, somebody to oversee, the kids or checking in with the kids. I mean, I applaud anybody who works outside the home, but the kids can't raise themselves. That puts them at risk. So there's a lot of things that encompass at risk families or at risk kids.
Okay. Well, I certainly concur with that. I think that at-risk families are those families that cannot provide themselves or their children with those fundamental needs that they must have just to survive. It's about survival. Are you with me? So they're either affected at the physical level, no health care, poor health care, bad health, and so forth and so on. Well, certainly the body is the instrument through which we actually implement everything that pops up in our mind. So if this body is tore up, are you with me? If it is racked with illnesses, then that puts everything at risk that is required to be done with the physical body. You see, so health care. You see, families that don't have health care are not able to really do their part in taking care of the children, for instance. There's financial, obviously. You see, it's interesting what is built into the actual laws in this country, and you can read it yourself. I'm sure there's some historians here, where Black people during those dark times here, you were not permitted to own land and things of that nature. You see, you are always cut off from the opportunity to acquire the kind of wealth that you would need to really be able to take care of a family. Are you with me? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot more can be said about that. We see a lot of that even returning today with these young men out here on the streets, you see. And because of systemic racism is still here, they're not going to be able to get those jobs. A white felon is much more likely to get a job than a college graduate. That is black. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to, Andrea Thompson had her hand raised, and I think you're unmuted,
Yes.
so you can go ahead and.
Yeah. I see her question.
Andrea, did you want to go ahead and ask your
20% of the
question?
fathers. Yes. Hi, Andrea. Okay.
Hello. I might have just touched something by mistake.
Oh, she takes something by mistake?
Oh, that's okay.
Yes.
Lewis Himes had a great question in the chat room. He wanted to ask, how do you address the issues in the classroom with anger, and how do you address that when you have students coming back into the fall? Some schools will be reopening, and how do schools address this? I know that you've done some work in the schools, and you've been trained to work with principals and counselors and social workers. And just, you know, I know that as a school social worker, I think one of the first things we need to do is acknowledge that this is existing. I think oftentimes teachers and school staff are just looking at our children as parking meters, as if they don't exist, as if these issues are not being happening in the world, that they're not impacted by it. And I think it's very important for educators to actually build into the classroom time where these kids actually have a safe space to talk about how this is impacting them. Because when you go to school and you ignore it, they're looking at teachers and staff who don't really know them and see them and understand what they're going through. And so I will respond to that by saying that it is important to build time every single day into the school day to have social emotional learning activities, to have kids be able to talk about race in courageous ways, because when you're silent, it's not helping them at all. What feedback would you have?
Well, definitely, those things that you just mentioned are certainly parts of any kind of a therapeutic process to help these children better cope with their anger within the school environment. Certainly, working with the deans, we do a lot of interaction via the Heart organization with the deans and so forth and so on. And it's that tier 3 behavior we're looking for. Are you with me? Because that's the most challenging to the classroom teacher. Now, you have to remember, though, that some of the classroom teachers themselves don't have the skill set. You know, they take a lot of those kids' behavior very personal because they trigger memories of perhaps the guy that bullied them when they're in school and they overreact. So the first thing is that the classroom teacher must have the capacity to manage their own anger. That's the sign of a good teacher, you see, that they don't take it personal and respond out of that, because sometimes that triggers and escalates the students in class, in school misbehavior. But nevertheless, there are those kids who are not victims of the angry teacher, but rather there's something going on at home. So we have another level of our relationship with the school district where we have a family outreach program where I or one of the staff, we go into the family now, because see, a lot of the trauma and stresses in that family that is producing that behavior, right? I think any classroom teacher knows this. I don't have to remind you if you ever taught school and you had a parent-teacher conference, and when that parent comes up, you now understand why Johnny acts the way he does. You see, he's mimicking that behavior that is in the house, right? So we go into the family, because again, a lot of the family have an adversarial relationship with the school. Right? They don't want you to know none of their business and so forth and so on. And so they don't normally like to come up there. But so we go into the home and we sit down with that family, you see, and we find out what are the triggers here. What's the source of this risk? Sometimes it is divorce. A lot of these families are going through divorce, and we all know what divorce does to kids, right? Or there's drug addiction, right? Or there's a financial problem. Are you with me? They don't have money, they don't have food, so we'll network with the a DuPage Township or Will County Community Service Program and have to try to help them. You see, sometimes it's housing, whatever it is, we try to help that parent, that family, because children are a product of that family, you see. However, some of the children really do have problems, you see. A lot of the kids, by the time they get to high school, they got social anxiety disorders, right? And that you get another kind of disorder that don't show up until a certain stage in their own development, right? So they just start developing bipolarism or schizoid affective disorders and so forth and so on. So we bring Hargrove, we have Hargrove for Valley View, right? Right, Dr. Yolanda, right? So we created a what in the school district 365 out here that includes Romeoville and Bolingbrook, a community school, a community university, if you will, right? Where we identify all of these needs and we create wraparound services, you see, and bring those into the parent. So if I go into a parent home and somebody's on drugs or alcohol, right? So I can hook them up with Hargrove and get some help, you see, for that. So it's a lot of different things. It's very complex, but essentially, it's a reflection of the deterioration of our capacity to make good human beings. Here in America, we make great cars, great computers, so forth and so on. We've completely lost the art of making good human beings. We don't value character. You see, in the Yoruba tradition, you know, they understood that the goal of a human being that is seeking success is to develop what they call iwapele, character. You see, and that's a parenting function.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Daryl Parks had a question. I'm sorry, I can't find you on here to unmute you, but the question was, there's a rise of Black militia and Black men and women legally training and arming themselves. You know, we're seeing on social media, people in groups with, you know, guns and protecting themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's very interesting, you know. If you know something about those early rebellions, because this is not the first time Black people have armed themselves. They didn't have machine guns, but they had machetes and things of that nature. But if you go back to like the history in Haiti, you see, with Toussaint Louverture, right? And his encounter with Napoleon, right? Well, they did a lot of stuff, you know, that we would say, oh, they were violent, right? But they were willing to go down, even at the risk of dying, to resurrect their humanity. You see, so you had those. Even in the Americas, you know, you had the Bacon Rebellion, right? Right, and so forth and so on, and something like 1676 again. You see. So there's always been a kind of violence. And one of the things that came out of that, it wasn't just killing the oppressors. Sometimes they killed other Black people. Are you with me? I mean, I hope y'all know that Black on Black crime is not new here. And some of those rebellions, the first people that they would kill would be those slaves who were loyal to the master. They killed them first, so that they're not able to go back and tell them. So this is it's been a part of the whole effort. Now, hopefully, that doesn't become the sole strategy anymore. Because come on, you're not going to machine gun. It's not going to defeat a bomb. This is not going to happen. Are you with me? it might have a small place in the sense that, like with the Black Panthers, I think some of you rascals on here are old enough to remember the Black Panthers and so forth and so on, right? To give a sense of security, because people were feeling insecure, unsafe, especially our women and children. Are you with me? So that kind of phenomena arose to give us the experience of safety and security, which is a psychological need. We have to feel safe and secure. So sometimes those experiences produces that. Are you with me? But if your question is that a final solution? No. You see, Japan tried that, and they dropped a big boy, and 300,000 of them disappeared in a few seconds.
Daryl, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. It wasn't so much for a final solution, but I think Dr. Ingram, you touched on it, the security, and because I think going down this psychological journey that we've been going down, as Black men, our first and foremost is to be able to protect ourselves and our families. Can't protect the family if I don't protect myself.
True.
And so I saw this rise, and I see this rise in Black militia arming themselves, marching on in Atlanta, and I saw that as a symbol of we're not. This is not a revolution, right? They're not that type of revolution, because you're right. One bomb and then forget about it, right?
Right.
But it's more of me jogging down the street. And me being approached, I'm going to defend myself. And I'm just letting you know that I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to defend my family, and I'm going to defend myself. So that's as far as I wanted to go with that, right? Because we know this revolution's not there. That's not going to happen, right?
That's right. Actually, you're right on the point, because one of the first things they did, because you have to understand, white supremacy is woven into every law in this country. You have to understand that. Don't get this twisted here. All of our law, follow the law, you're really following some form and aspect of white supremacy. That's what following the law is about. And when they wrote those into their first Congress regional meeting, right? They specifically wrote into non-white or Black people cannot own a gun or gun power, so that it was against the law for you to even have a gun to protect yourself or your family, or land to make a living to feed them, right? So you could begin to see how that impacted Black male-female relationship, because most women, I think I can say this without sounding, expect their man to protect them, because one of the women's greatest need is for security and safety. They gotta take care of these babies and raise these kids. They can't be worried about, all of that other stuff. So men, you see, were there to protect them. In fact, the way we got caught up in this kind of ma'afa is that those slave traders, Arabs and Europeans, would come into it. The men are out hunting, right? And after the hunt, you come back, your wife and your kids you go look for them. That's how we got captured, trying to protect our women and our children. And the first thing that the slave owners did is deprived us of the ability to do that. They castrated us, our manhood. You see? Now, men, we understand this. Now, sisters, you may not understand this, what it feels like to not have access to your manhood. That's gonna make you wanna holler. Yeah, it's like that.
Thank you.
It's like that. Much more can be said. Much more can be said. But you have to understand how this all happened here. If you don't understand how we got here, you're not going to understand how to get out of here. It's really that simple, folks. We learn in school, if you don't understand the problem, you're not going to find the answer, because the answer is in the problem. You see, the same way you came in the room is the same way you got to exit this room. You got to understand all of that. Are you with me? You can't guess at it. Yeah. Right. But definitely, brother, you said something. You see my point? You said something. Now, I'm going to leave that alone because, you know, men, we get emotional about that. Yeah,
Thank you.
Get emotional about it.
Thank you for sharing. So Cherie, I have a question for you, because we do see that the stigma surrounding mental health is changing. What are some ways that we can counter the stigmas around Black mental health so that the Black community could learn to accept and be more willing to seek the help that they need?
I think, like I said earlier, one of the things that I do is I really educate people on, you know, not looking at the diagnosis, whatever diagnosis that they've been given, not focusing on it. Focus on the symptoms. Again, I'm treating the symptoms. I could care less that it's called depression. I mean, it is what it is, but I'm treating the symptoms. How can we move past the symptoms? How can we, you know, put those strategies or interventions in place to manage those things? If you focus solely on the name, then you're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck. You know, these things didn't just come about. You know, depression has been around for a long time. Anxiety has been around a long time, but only until the DSM came about. It's like, oh, that's what that is. I mean, we all probably got something. If you look hard enough at the DSM, we probably all got something. You know, so that's why the name isn't as important to me as the symptoms. And when I can convey that to people, especially people of color, it's like, okay. And I tell them all the time, you can have all the credentials in the world, but if you don't have the ability to make connections with the person on the other side, you've already lost them. Like Dr. Ingram said, we tend to go to one session and then that's it. So you have to make that session as important as you can make it, you know, making that connection that early on so that you don't have them. I actually have conversations with people during my first session. I'm not so focused on, you know, let me make this diagnosis. I'm talking to them. We're conversing. We're having dialogue, you know, so that they really feel comfortable in opening up about what brought them there, you know, because I'll tell them I can only help you when you're as open as you can be. But I also listen to not only what people say, but what they don't say. And when you can tap into what people aren't saying, you got them. You got them. So I appreciate those repeated, you know, people coming in. If they're willing to do the work, I'm really willing to have them in and let's work through this.
Thank you. I also think we need to continue to use our platforms to talk about mental health. I think, you know, I'm so grateful to be a part of the DuPage AMEC community that we're doing this, but I think if we get more Black mental health professionals to do these platforms for free and to use social media to put it out there, I think people will become more comfortable with the idea. Because, you know, we're talking a lot about systemic racism, but, you know, we're not talking about institutionalized racism and things that people are experiencing in their workplace. And, you know, I told my son the other day, he was really, it was really weighing heavy on him, all the things that were going on. And he thought I was playing, but I told him, call in Black, baby. You ain't got to work today. And he was like, well, I can't say I'm a call in Black. No, but you need a mental health day. And I think it's important that we understand that this is weighing heavily on us and it is okay to take care of ourselves. But I do appreciate seeing in the media these people who are being canceled and losing their jobs because of the racially charged acts that we're seeing. And I just want to be focused on the time. It is 11:09. You're more than welcome to stay on as we're continuing to engage in these conversations. My sister Yvette had a question, so I have unmuted you, Yvette, so please feel free to ask your question.
Thank you. Mr. Ingram, thanks for being here, and as well as you, Ms. White. My question is for you, Mr. Ingram. Can you expound on cultural alienation? Because I have found myself not wanting to be around whiteness and what that represents. And at this point, I don't see anything wrong with that. And you brought that up. So will you enlighten me on that, please?
Mm-hmm. Yes. You see, a kind of cultural alienation in respect to and in reaction to white supremacy and so forth and so on is just one aspect. But cultural alienation could be intercultural alienation. You see, an alienation from other Black people. Are you with me? Because you begin to start experiencing an artificial sense of being separate from. And that makes unity difficult, right? Because, okay, you go to school, you get a Ph.D. Your cousin just got out of jail, right? You tend to distance from that. Are you with me? Because you want to be seen as being quote unquote different. And at some level you are, but in terms of the situation, if you got a PhD and you out there and you get stopped, that PhD ain't gonna keep that officer from shooting you. You see? So it's intercultural alienation is included in that whole process. The alienation from white people is because you're afraid. You know what I mean? Now with men, what happens is that because see, Black men and the experience of racism in this country was always designed to destroy the Black male. That's what you have to understand. Right? You have to understand that. So that's actually written into the laws of this country, the government, you know. So the way they want to do that, and they did it through all kinds of horrible treatment of Black men. I won't even go into that. But the point I'm saying, it is still in us. So when Brother Parks, you get stopped by police, you get a pit in your stomach and you want to get away. Black boys, the first time a cop stops them, they want to run. Are you with me? There's an inbuilt fear reaction that makes them want to not have anything to do with these folks. Are you with me? Because something deep down inside is going to go very bad. You see? So it's many different forms of that alienation. It could become even emotionally, spiritually, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's many ways of alienation even arising within our own culture as well as with other. Because again, there's fundamental feeling of inferiority. It's such that you feel inferior to white people and you avoid them, you see, because it triggers your sense of inferiority. Are you with me? So you avoid it. So it will vary from individual to individual. See, it can't be cookie cutter. There's no such thing as cookie cutter therapy. That don't exist. That's a white approach. That's not African. Are you with me? It's so unique. Like your fingerprint is unique, right? And so it's like Sister White was saying, you got to get to know your client, right? So even in Western psychotherapy and psychology, for instance, we have DSM, right? But if you look at Axis 2 of the DSM, 80% of those disorders that and diagnoses are the result of the inability to manage anger. Anger is fundamental to the loss of mental and emotional health care. And that's what Sankofa Dhamma gave our ancestors. They could handle that and thus remain sane. So alienation is grounded in fear. Fear. So you start by examining your fears. You got to investigate, right? First, you got to recognize it. And then you got to accept you're afraid of something. What are you afraid of? Because you will avoid what you're afraid of. That's human nature. Are you with me? You tend to withdraw from that which you fear. And so you look and see where you are alienated at. Are you with me? And we got to go to work there. See, we call it the work. This is work, folks. Same philosophy. It's not merely psychology. Are you with me? It has those components, but they're on the peripheral. You see, this is work. You see? And it takes everything of a man and woman to do this work. And it starts with telling yourself the truth about yourself. You see?
Yes.
First, you got to get past self-esteem. Self-esteem is a pseudo phenomenon. Are you with me? It's just your opinion you have about yourself. Very often it's not grounded in any reality whatsoever. Are you with me? at all, right? So don't get it twisted. You see, you got to start telling the truth first to yourself. You can't tell the truth about yourself to yourself. See, that's called self-alienation, Yvette. Self-alienation. That's what we thought this was. You see? Because if you're going to lie to yourself, you're going to lose all remnants of sanity. All of it. You see?
Thank you
This
so
is the
much.
truth.
Thank you. All right, I want to go ahead and open up the floor to Reverend Ross.
Hi, yes, thank you so much, Dr. Ingram and Mrs. White. I just would like to ask, what are some of the spiritual practices that we could use to help us mentally during this COVID-19 pandemic season and the season of Black Lives Matter? How can the church be of any type of spiritual assistance to that?
Sister White, do you want to go first? Cause I can spend at least 3 years talking about that.
I'm gonna take a poll because that's a heavy question. You know,
you're gonna bypass that? All right.
in that arena.
All right. So, part 1 of 3 years. Okay. The first thing is meditation, Pastor Barbara. You see?
Yes.
Now that involves a component of yoga. Now a lot of my own experience in education and training was in India, China, Africa, because those cultures, you see, still involve themselves in an actual spiritual process, because this all starts spiritual. Remember, we have the physical dimension of our being, we have an emotional dimension of our being, we have a mental, psychological, and we have a spiritual.
Yes.
Now, if the spiritual part of you are weak, you're going to become much more vulnerable and less effective at all of the lower levels of your own being. So the first thing, like in Christian and monastic Christianity, was you be still. You must learn how to be still. This is called asana. This is the yoga part. You got to sit down and you got to be still. You see? And relax into that stillness, because that relaxing into your stillness changes your breathing patterns. Are you with me? See, see, we have to really spend a lot of time with this one. Now, your breathing and your thoughts are interrelated. You see, there's a vein that goes in your thoughts. So all that inner chatter, your mind talking to you, that self-talk, you got to get quiet. But to get quiet in your mind, to get into a state of prayerfulness, you got to get still. You can't pray deeply if you can't be still. Now, we call that meditation. Now, there's a lot of different schools of meditation. There's Christian forms of meditation too. You see, those desert fathers and mothers, when they would go out into that forest, right? They going out there to meditate, right? I mean, they're not going out there to sing. They're going to meditate, to get quiet and meditate, because you have to go within. See, the spiritual place we got to get to is within us. You see, you can only go within to the degree that you can reverse your attention and take it in and take it off the world. You see, that's why, for instance, Jesus said, "Be not of this world." Be in it, don't get caught in this thing, right? Withdraw, come inside. In African tradition, we call it the eye of Heru. In India, you see the Tisratil, the Dai, the Tika, right? All of those were reflections, you see, of come here, come into yourself. Know thyself is what the ancestor called it, right? So yes, you're absolutely right. So there's a few things, I'm gonna sum it up, and then we can talk at another time. We're not gonna bore these people to death, okay? But first thing, save, what we call service or seva. You gotta do service to humanity. You must feed the hungry, clothe the sick. Christianity does a great job with the service part, right? That's fundamental. There must be service. You see, in the East, we call it karma yoga, which means that you're rendering selfless service. You ain't looking for nothing in return. You see, that helps you get out of some of your selfishness.
Yes.
Right? Because you got to have a process to transcend your own selfishness. You see, because selfishness retards spiritual growth. You see, so you serve selflessly. We call that service or seva. The second one is study. You got to study. You got to study the teachings, right? You got to read the Bible or read your Quran or read your Bhagavad Gita or whatever your preferences are. But you got to study that. You can't put all that burden on the pastor. You see, it's your responsibility to understand. Are you with me? You got to go to school with it. This is work, right? So you got to study the scriptures. This is how you remove your ignorance. You can't shout your ignorance away. You can't beat it away. The only antidote to ignorance is knowledge. Like with darkness, you can't say, darkness, get out the room. That ain't gonna work. You gotta turn some light on, right? So that's studying. You gotta study the scripture. Go to school with that. You see, right? And don't put all that burden on somebody else. Nobody else is responsible for you to understand but you. And you gotta put in that work. The next one is you gotta start telling the truth. I already mentioned that, right? So third component, you gotta start developing the capacity to tell the truth, starting first with telling the truth to yourself. To thy own self tell the truth. Are you with me? By definition, gotta go there, right? Now that's kind of hard because, see, now you gotta transcend your ego, right? Because see, the ego is that part of us that blocks out the truth about ourselves. In Jungian psychotherapy, we call it the shadow material. Are you with me? You'll tell people all about what's great about you, but you ain't gonna tell them that other stuff that's not so great. Are you with me? You're gonna hide that. True? Right? Like it ain't a part of you. Okay, you gotta come out of that. You see my point? That takes courage. You see, spiritual development is for grown folk, for real. It's not for children, it's for grown folk. You see, this is work. So you got to do that. Then there's a fourth component. Now you got to actually do the practice, meaning that you got to sit down, you got to meditate, you got to set time off. Now in my own, I've been teaching meditation yoga for like 40 years. You see my point? So you need to set aside 10% of your day off the top and develop your spiritual side. That's about 2.5 hours, right? You see, that's tight. That's tighting with your life. You take that off the top. Take it right off the top. You see, you get up early in the morning. Are you with me? Right?
Yes.
And you sit, and that's just you and your God time. It ain't family time. It ain't time to do no extra work and get ready. It's time for you and your God. You follow me? And you put in that time. You just sit there. You get still. Calm down. You see? You wait. Old folks say you wait on the Lord.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. See, African understood this. Our ancestors were brilliant, folks, you know? They come out of them cotton fields all day long. They come home, chuck some corn, then at a while, around about midnight, they get behind them shacks and hold hands and get happy again.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.
You're
Ingram.
Very informative. All right, Mavis, please go ahead.
Dr. Ingram, thanks for being here. You mentioned that some time ago, about 20% of fathers were absent from the home. Today, it's more like 74%. Do you know what's causing that? And what can we do to improve on that?
Well,
thank you.
That's a profound question. And I'm telling you, Reverend, that we really, you know, one of the things I hate most is glossing this stuff. I don't like to gloss this because this is too important, and the work you all have to do as our spiritual leaders is way too important. But you have to understand the economics of it. Are you with me? Again, everything that a government rooted in and purpose in the fulfillment of white supremacy has as its aim is the destruction of the black man. Destroy the black man, you destroy the black family, the kids, everything, right? So if you recall, around about that time, we had the Great Depression, right? Collapse, right? And a lot of black men never recovered from that. They could not get jobs again or anything. Are you with me? Right? And they could not take care of their family. Now, this is something very interesting. A lot of black men, oh, I wish I had time here tonight. A lot of black men exit the family because they could not tolerate the shame of not being able to provide and protect for their family. You see? It wasn't that they didn't love them. That's a great myth. They do love them. You see? But they could not confront the reality that I've been castrated socially, economically, functionally. You see? I can't even function like a man. You see? It's a lot of change. But then there was, of course, many that just couldn't get jobs, you see, and not being able to protect. And then government programs came in now, right? So now I can put you on welfare. I put you on ADC. I can help you pay your rent. Are you with me? And so forth. So you don't even need the black man. You know, we got you. We'll send you a check every month. Now, a lot of sisters fell for that. They thought that check is going to be equivalent to having a man in that house. And them boys turn 16 and they run all over you. You see? It gave them the illusion, well, okay, I got my ADC check, or I got my supplemental support system. I got my job even, and I'm making good money. I don't need no man, you see? Right? And dismissed him, right? They stopped respecting him. One of the greatest psychological needs, Reverend, that a man has is for the experience of being respected. If you don't respect him, he feels that you don't need him, you don't love him, and he's out of here. You see? It's a real complicated matter. Well, a lot of them got that twisted. Are you with me? You see? And the man was gone. And you got these boys in here. You're not going to make these boys a man. You don't know nothing about that. That's man work. How you going to make a boy a man? You don't know nothing about that. And a black man at that, this ain't going to work. So that is what happened. So now you see the progression of it, Reverend. So 19, 29, 30, 23%, now 74. They locking them up, incarceration, federalization, right? So on the west side of Chicago, where 90% of the inmates locked up in the state of Illinois come right back to Lundell, to Holy City. Are you with me? Where are they gonna work? You're a felon, right? You can't vote. You see my point is right there in the Constitution says so we can discriminate against you legally. Turn down housing, right? Run them drugs, right? Then you're gonna get locked up, right? Now, so 2 million plus people in the prison system, right? The vast majority of them are African American, Latino, et cetera, right? Well, what are we, 30% of the population here? How can we be 60% plus in the prisons? Yeah. Further removal, right? And so boys without father, they suffer from what I call sister white father deficit disorders. I deal with that. You see, that's part of what I try to incorporate into the rehabilitative process that I'll make available to them, right? Is the manhood development training, because they ain't got fathers. And some men got to reach and grab their hand and bring them across that divide from boys to men. You see? You can't get them there with a lecture. You see? So you got to educate, you got to motivate, and you got to support. You got to get down here with these kids for real. No fooling, no kidding. You see? You got to be there for them. You may have to give them some money. You may have to, I mean, it takes what it takes, you see? But that's part of the process, you see? There's got to be that kind of a thing. Even a rites of passage for the girls. Have to do that for some of the girls, because girls are also affected by absent father syndrome. Is that about right? So got to take the girls through that, you know? They got a lot of issues because Pop wasn't there. Nobody there to protect them. You can't really develop psychologically in a healthy way without having the experience of being protected. You will always be full of anxiety. You see, right? You can't father yourself. You can't mother yourself. You didn't born yourself. How you gonna do that? So slavery and white supremacy has really did a lot of damage, but not so much damage that we can't recover. Are you with me? You see, we can definitely recover. You see, most of us on this Zoom meeting are testimony of that, right? We can come back from here. We just gotta, as Big Mama said, we gotta hold hands here. Go get them children.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You are just an encyclopedia of information, and I know that we greatly appreciate all of the knowledge you have given us. Thank you so much, Sora, Cherie, for being here. If there are any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and raise your hand on your computer screen. Otherwise, I will give it over to Derek.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, Dr. Ingram, Cherie, we have greatly benefited from your time. We thank you for joining us this morning. We will be sharing your phone numbers, your contact information for people that may have questions after this and or in need of a therapist. So I will be sharing that information. You know, it will be on the church website for people. At this point, I will ask Reverend Lana, if she will, offer us a word and prayer and dismiss us. Again, thank you all for joining. We greatly appreciate your attendance. And a definite shout out to Kalita for helping to facilitate this conversation. Reverend Lana, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Let's try that again.
There we go.
As we just quiet ourselves and just think about all of the things that we have heard today. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you, Lord, for being with us and creating a space that we might be able to hear even our own thoughts, but especially the thoughts of others, that we might be able to push against them in our minds and to be able to realize that which we cannot really realize all by ourselves without you, Lord. So we ask that you would continue to be with us even as we continue to think about and reflect upon all of the things that we have heard and the questions continue to arise. We ask that you would continue to send angels to be in the midst of those thoughts in our minds and all of the things that we consider. I thank you for the speakers. I thank you for the moderator. I thank you for the committee. I thank you for our church community. And I ask that you continue to bless us. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye.